Hi, and welcome to Peace Church. I'm glad that you've decided to join us today. If you would like to know more about us, please like us on Facebook. We are Peace Church 30117. Or you can visit our blog where we post inspiring messages that ground us, challenge us, and keep us vigilant in our quest to serve God and to serve God's people. If you are ever in the West Georgia area and would like to join us, we would love to have you. Just message us on Facebook and we will give you driving directions and the address. Today, I'd like to take for a subject redemption, heaven, and the point of faith. I'll briefly discuss some of the themes that I see running through the passages offered for consideration in today's lectionary readings, and I will try to relate them to my understanding of redemption, heaven, and the point of faith. In Psalm chapter 4, David is upset because people are talking badly about him, spreading lies and damaging his reputation. He says he will cry out to God because God takes care, personal care, of the faithful. He then admonishes the people to be afraid and to stop sinning and to think about what they've done and to weep over it. They should then offer sacrifices to God, presumably to restore community between them and the psalmist. In Acts chapter 3, Peter is explaining that the scriptures foretold of Jesus and that there's power in his name. Power from God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the same God that the people in this scene serve and worship. And this power gives life and brings healing. The people, however, have not recognized Jesus as the Messiah. They have killed him, causing a great rift in the community. Peter warns them that they must repent so that God may restore the community. In 1 John 3, John is talking to those who remain faithful to the teachings of Jesus and that come to the understanding that Jesus is the Messiah. Earlier in chapter 2, he acknowledges that there has been a rift in the community and that some have gone astray, denying that Jesus is the Christ. Those who remain are called children of God and are exhorted to purify themselves and remain in relationship with Christ. It appears that this relationship with Christ is how we are able to maintain our status as children of God and to avoid the pitfalls of sin. Finally, in the gospel reading of Luke, Jesus is readying the disciples for the mission to which he is calling them, a mission of expanding the boundaries of the community to include the Gentiles. Throughout these scriptures, there seems to be a pattern of community building. Either God is at work expanding the borders of the community, or something has caused a breach within the community, and the people are looking for ways to repair it. We've all been part of multiple communities throughout our lives. It's no secret community life doesn't come easily. We find that at its worst moments, community can be filled with contention, drama, and division. We find that just when we think we've made it in, there are those within our circle and among our ranks who will talk badly about us and besmirch our good name. We find that just when we're comfortable with our belief system, there are those among us who will move in a different direction and destabilize our community. We find that when we embrace what we believe to be an authentic path, there are those whom we love who will not follow us into unmarked territory. Community is hard. The scriptures attest to that. But even with its potential for messiness and heartbreak, God steadily nudges us towards community. Because ultimately, I think that's what the kingdom of heaven is. A highly evolved community organized around the principles of the way and teachings of Jesus, where folks walk in harmony as each expresses the fullness of the fruit of the Spirit. Fruit identified by Paul in Galatians 5:22-23 as love, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. For me, that seems to be the point of faith. Now, for a while, it seems as if my personal studies and in several of my preaching moments, I've returned again and again to the story of Jesus' baptism and wilderness experience. When Jesus came out of the depths of the wilderness, he began to preach, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." This wasn't a new message. Before him, John the Baptist was also preaching, "Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is at hand." When I was growing up, I was taught that heaven was a city ruled by God, somewhere maybe on the top of a mountain beyond the sky. And in this city, there were many descriptions about it, with pearly gates and streets paved with gold, and mansions where Sunday had no end and trouble had no means to access or penetrate its walls. It was said to be a glorious kingdom, one reserved for those who had lived in a way that really pleased God. It was their reward for good living. And the way to get to heaven, we were taught, was to go to church, confess the lordship of Jesus, and abstain as best you can from sinning, which we understood to be limited mostly to following sexual mores and avoiding bad neighbor behaviors like stealing, cheating, and lying. This understanding of sin-free living was our form of righteousness, and we used it like an insurance policy to fireproof eternity, because we thought that God might smite us if we did otherwise. And when that story became too tiresome or too frightening, we told ourselves about heaven as a means to cope with or look beyond the enormous burdens we faced in everyday life. Burdens like working 40 hours a week and not being able to make ends meet and still being food insecure. Burdens like watching most of our young black or poor or other minority children being rounded up and tracked into special classes where they were warehoused and made to feel inferior until they completely lost interest in school and dropped out. Burdens like watching those very same children get trapped at the bottom of the economic ladder in adulthood with few skills to help them climb it. That's if they didn't first end up in jail or prison. Burdens like watching our men try to be men according to standards that told them that they had to be providers and protectors when many of them lacked access to legitimate means to make enough money to provide, and most of them confused strength with dominance and assumed that it was a man's place to lord his position over a woman. Burdens, like watching these men bury a sizable portion of themselves as they chose never to express a range of emotions for fear that their manhood and masculinity would be questioned and challenged. Burdens, like watching our daughters have their hearts broken because the men they love never learned to be faithful because custom taught them that a sign of virility was to conquer and sleep with many women. So many burdens that frustrated all of us in a whole lot of ways. We didn't even realize that there were interlocking systems of domination forming a matrix of oppression that kept all of us living at a level far below satisfaction. And instead of using our faith to withdraw from and question such a system, we focused instead on life after death and said it will be better in the by and by, instead of using our faith to build a heavenly community among ourselves where we learned to see Jesus in the eyes of our neighbors. We resigned ourselves to waiting till that blessed morning when we could see him in glory. But I thank God for community. I thank God for Peace Church. In this community, I can see God at work in my own life, cultivating the fruit of the Spirit and nourishing me to spiritual health. I see God at work. Now, I don't expect everybody to conclude like I have that the point of redemption is to build community. But I put great stock in the prayer of Jesus when he said, Father, let your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Be blessed.